Do ancient scriptures still have a place in our modern world? Can centuries-old traditions adapt to the ever-changing values of society today? And what happens when faith and modernity collide head-on? These are rhetorical questions and real dilemmas that shape how we live, think, and interact with the world. This video will explore 5 controversial topics where the Bible intersects with contemporary society, from LGBTQ+ rights to the role of women in science versus faith. This discussion challenges assumptions while fostering dialogue, respect, and deeper understanding. Welcome to Bible Narratives. Today we're diving into a fascinating and thought-provoking discussion, the 5 most controversial topics where the Bible and modern society seem to clash. These topics include debates about science and faith, human rights, ethics, and the evolving role of women and tradition in a fast-changing world. Each of these subjects has sparked intense conversations and varying interpretations throughout history and into modern time. Our goal here isn't to judge or take sides, but to explore these issues thoughtfully. Together we'll consider different perspectives and uncover how ancient wisdom might still resonate or conflict with today's values. So, whether you're someone deeply rooted in faith, curious about religion, or just seeking to understand these complex debates, there's something here for you. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the conversation in the comments below. Let's get started on this eye-opening journey. Homosexuality and same-sex marriage remain deeply divisive topics at the intersection of religion and modern values. The Bible, in verses like Leviticus 18:22 and Romans 1:26-27-6, leading many to view them as sinful according to traditional Christian doctrine. These teachings have shaped the Christian community's beliefs and practices for centuries, often positioning them in opposition to the growing acceptance of LGBTQ+ rights. In the modern era, societal perspectives have shifted dramatically. One of the most significant milestones was the legalization of same-sex marriage across the United States in 2015. This change marked a turning point in the recognition of LGBTQ+ rights and ignited debates within religious communities about whether traditional doctrines could or should be adopted. Progressive denominations, such as the Episcopal Church, have chosen to affirm LGBTQ+ individuals, officiating same-sex weddings and embracing LGBTQ+ clergy. In contrast, more conservative groups continue to uphold traditional teachings, emphasizing their commitment to scriptural authority. The question of how to interpret Scripture is central to this debate. Many theologians argue that biblical passages condemning homosexuality must be understood in their historical and cultural contexts. For example, some suggest that these verses addressed specific practices such as exploitative relationships or idol worship, rather than consensual same-sex partnerships as understood today. Others, however, maintain that these passages represent universal moral truths that are unchanging and binding for Christians. For LGBTQ+ individuals within Christian communities, this tension often becomes deeply personal. Many share stories of rejection, exclusion, and internal conflict as they navigate the complexities of faith and identity. Despite these challenges, a growing number of LGBTQ+ Christians remain committed to their faith and advocate for change within their communities. Their voices have sparked discussions about how the Church can embody Jesus' message of love, compassion, and inclusion without compromising its doctrinal foundations. Globally, the divide over homosexuality and same-sex marriage reflects broader cultural and theological differences. The Anglican Communion, for example, has experienced significant internal conflict, with Western provinces generally supporting LGBTQ+ rights, while many African and Asian provinces strongly oppose them. This divide highlights the interplay of culture, tradition, and theology, raising the question of whether a unified Christian stance on the issue is even possible. The implications of this debate extend far beyond church walls. It intersects with broader societal issues, such as anti-discrimination laws and religious freedom. High-profile cases like Masterpiece Cake Shop v. Colorado Civil Rights Commission, where a baker refused to create a wedding cake for a same-sex couple citing religious beliefs, illustrate these tensions. Such cases provoke national conversations about how to balance personal convictions with equal rights. Ultimately, this topic raises fundamental questions. Can religious traditions evolve in response to changing societal values, or should they remain steadfast in their teachings? How can faith communities navigate these complex discussions with empathy and respect for all sides? These are the questions that continue to shape the relationship between the Bible, faith, and modern society. What's your take on this debate? Should religious teachings adapt to modern societal values, or should they remain unchanged? Let us know in the comments below. The debate between science and creation is one of the most enduring conflicts between modern understanding and religious tradition. In Genesis, the Bible describes God creating the universe in 6 days, shaping a narrative that has guided millions of believers for centuries. This account portrays a divine and orderly act of creation, emphasizing the purpose and intentionality behind existence. However, modern science offers a contrasting explanation. The Big Bang Theory suggests that the universe began approximately 13.8 billion years ago, and the theory of evolution explains the gradual development of life over billions of years. These theories, supported by extensive evidence from fields like cosmology, paleontology, and genetics, often clash with literal interpretations of Genesis. For some Christians, this conflict is irreconcilable. Young Earth creationists, for example, hold firmly to the belief that the Earth is only around 6,000 years old, a figure derived from biblical genealogies. They argue that scientific findings contradicting this timeline are either flawed or misinterpreted. On the other hand, many Christians adopt a more metaphorical or allegorical view of Genesis. Organizations like BioLogos, founded by Francis Collins, advocate for theistic evolution, which integrates scientific understanding with the belief in a divine creator. This debate isn't just about facts and figures, it's deeply personal and societal. In the United States, education policies have been shaped by this tension. The famous Scopes trial of 1925 highlighted the clash between teaching evolution and upholding biblical creation in public schools. More recently, cases like Kitzmiller v. Dover in 2005 have further emphasized the legal and cultural struggles over how to present origins in education. Interestingly, there are prominent examples of individuals who bridge the gap between faith and science. Francis Collins, a devout Christian and geneticist, views his scientific work as a means to understand God's creation. He famously referred to the human genome as the language of God, highlighting how scientific discovery can deepen rather than diminish religious faith. The debate also raises profound philosophical and theological questions. If the Bible isn't a scientific textbook, how should its teachings be understood in a modern context? Should faith address spiritual truths while science handles empirical evidence, or can these domains enrich each other? For many, the answer lies in dialogue. A willingness to see faith and science not as adversaries but as complementary approaches to understanding existence. Beyond theology and science, this debate forces us to reflect on how we perceive truth itself. Is truth singular, or can it have multiple dimensions, each valid within its context? For example, the poetic beauty of Genesis can inspire awe and moral reflection, while scientific theories provide insights into the mechanisms of the universe. What's your perspective? Can faith and science coexist, or are they inherently opposed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Abortion and artificial reproductive technologies are two deeply personal and controversial issues where faith and modern society often collide. The Bible, in passages like Psalm 139:13-16, emphasizes the sanctity of life, portraying a God who knows and forms individuals even in the womb. This perspective has long been a cornerstone of Christian opposition to abortion, which is viewed by many as a violation of God's creation. The landmark case of Roe v. Wade in 1973 legalized abortion in the United States, but its overturning in 2022 reignited debates across the nation. For Christians, this issue often centers on the question, when does life begin? Many believe life starts at conception, making abortion morally unacceptable except in cases where the mother's life is in danger. Others within the faith community advocate for a more nuanced view, emphasizing compassion for women facing unplanned pregnancies and considering complex socioeconomic factors. Artificial reproductive technologies like in vitro fertilization, IVF, add another layer of complexity to this discussion. While these technologies offer hope to families struggling with infertility, they also raise ethical concerns. For example, the creation of excess embryos during the IVF process has sparked debate about the moral status of these embryos. Some Christian groups oppose IVF outright, viewing it as interference with God's design for procreation. Others embrace it as a gift of science that can fulfill the biblical command to be fruitful and multiply. Genesis 1:28. The tension between moral principles and personal rights becomes particularly evident in these debates. For instance, some Christians argue that the focus should be on supporting women through unplanned pregnancies rather than condemning them for their choices. This perspective is reflected in initiatives by churches and faith-based organizations that provide counseling, financial assistance, and adoption services. Globally, these issues highlight significant cultural and theological diversity. In some predominantly Christian nations, abortion remains highly restricted, while in others it is widely accepted. Similarly, attitudes toward reproductive technologies vary, with some denominations embracing scientific advancements and others viewing them as incompatible with biblical teachings. Beyond theological debates, these topics intersect with broader societal concerns about individual autonomy, gender equality, and access to healthcare. Legislation and court cases often become battlegrounds where these values clash. For example, restrictions on abortion access disproportionately affect women in marginalized communities, raising questions about justice and equity. Ultimately, the discussions around abortion and artificial reproductive technologies challenge faith communities to navigate complex ethical landscapes. How can the Church uphold its teachings while responding compassionately to the realities of modern life? These questions require open dialogue, a willingness to listen, and a commitment to understanding the diverse experiences of those affected. What's your perspective on these issues? How should faith communities balance traditional teachings with the complexities of modern reproductive technologies? Let us know in the comments below. The role of women in society and religion has been a source of significant debate, both historically and in contemporary times. Biblical passages such as 1 Corinthians 14:34-35 and Ephesians 5:22-24 emphasize submission and silence for women, reflecting the cultural norms of ancient societies. For centuries, these teachings have shaped the role of women in Christian communities, often limiting their opportunities for leadership and influence. However, the modern era has brought about substantial shifts in how women are perceived and treated, both in society at large and within religious institutions. Many churches have begun to ordain female leaders, recognizing their ability to contribute meaningfully to spiritual life. Denominations like the United Methodist Church and the Episcopal Church have fully embraced female clergy, while others, such as the Roman Catholic Church, continue to restrict the priesthood to men. This divide often centers on the interpretation of Scripture. Traditionalists argue that the Bible's teachings on the role of women are timeless and divinely ordained. They emphasize that passages like Ephesians 5:22-24, which speaks of wives submitting to their husbands, represent God's intended order for family and church life. In contrast, progressive theologians suggest that these verses must be understood within their historical and cultural context. They argue that the teachings were specific to the patriarchal societies of the time and should not dictate the roles of women in today's more egalitarian world. Women themselves have been at the forefront of this debate, sharing their experiences and advocating for change. Many have highlighted the harm caused by rigid interpretations of Scripture that exclude women from leadership roles or portray them as subordinate. Stories of women breaking barriers in ministry serve as powerful testimonies to the potential for progress within the Church. For example, women like Beth Moore, a prominent evangelical speaker, have challenged traditional norms, inspiring countless others to pursue their callings despite resistance. Globally, the role of women in religion varies widely. In some cultures, deeply rooted traditions continue to enforce strict gender roles, while others have embraced gender equality as a reflection of broader societal changes. These differences often highlight the tension between preserving tradition and adapting to modern values, a challenge that churches worldwide must navigate. Beyond the church, this discussion intersects with broader societal movements for gender equality. The rise of feminism has encouraged women to challenge long-standing inequalities, including those within religious contexts. These movements have not only reshaped public discourse, but have also compelled many faith communities to reevaluate their teachings and practices. Ultimately, the debate over the role of women in religion is about more than leadership positions or doctrinal interpretations. It's about recognizing the dignity, worth, and spiritual contributions of women. As faith communities continue to grapple with these questions, they are faced with the challenge of honoring tradition while embracing the realities of a changing world. What do you think about the role of women in religion? Should traditional roles evolve to reflect modern values, or should they remain rooted in historical teachings? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Capital punishment, or the death penalty, is one of the most divisive issues at the intersection of faith and modern ethics. The Bible, particularly in the Old Testament, prescribes the death penalty for a range of offenses, including adultery, blasphemy, and murder. Passages like Leviticus 20:10 and Exodus 21:12 present these laws as divine mandates, reflecting the justice system of ancient Israel, where punishments serve to uphold social order and holy law. In modern society, however, capital punishment faces growing opposition, particularly in nations with strong human rights. Advocacy. In the United States, while some states still uphold the death penalty, others have abolished it entirely, citing concerns about wrongful convictions, racial disparities, and the moral implications of taking a life. Many Christian denominations have joined the call for abolition, referencing Jesus' teachings on mercy and forgiveness, such as the famous story of the woman caught in adultery, John 8 verse 1, where Jesus declares, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone." The debate often hinges on the tension between justice and compassion. Supporters of the death penalty argue that it is a necessary deterrent to severe crimes and an appropriate form of justice for heinous acts. They may cite Romans 13:04, where Paul speaks of governing authorities bearing the sword as agents of God's wrath against wrongdoers. From this perspective, capital punishment is seen as a legitimate exercise of divine justice through human institutions. On the other hand, opponents argue that the New Testament's emphasis on grace, redemption, and the sanctity of life undermines the legitimacy of the death penalty. They point to the transformative power of forgiveness, as seen in the example of Jesus forgiving his executioners on the cross, Luke 23:34. This perspective emphasizes the potential for rehabilitation, and the idea that every individual, no matter their crime, is made in the image of God and worthy of dignity. The practical application of these theological principles varies across Christian communities and cultural contexts. In some predominantly Christian nations, capital punishment remains a legal practice, often justified by traditional readings of Scripture. In others, churches actively campaign against it, aligning their stance with broader human rights movements. Beyond theology, the issue raises important societal questions. Studies have shown significant racial and socioeconomic disparities in the application of the death penalty, leading many to question its fairness and impartiality. Additionally, advances in forensic science have revealed numerous wrongful convictions, further eroding public trust in its implementation. Ultimately, the debate over capital punishment challenges faith communities to reconcile Old Testament law with New Testament grace. It also forces broader reflections on justice, mercy, and the value of human life in a modern context. Should the church advocate for justice as retribution? What's your view on the death penalty? Do you think it aligns with Christian values, or is it incompatible with the principles of mercy and forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And there you have it, the 5 most controversial topics where the Bible and modern society intersect. These discussions reveal theological debates and ethical, cultural, and social challenges that impact how we live and think today. From questions about human rights and scientific progress to the evolving role of women and justice systems. These topics challenge us to reconcile ancient teachings with modern realities. What's particularly fascinating is that these debates aren't limited to one perspective. Across Christian communities and beyond, there's a rich diversity of opinions, each shaped by individual experiences, cultural backgrounds, and interpretations of Scripture. This diversity is both a challenge and an opportunity. It reminds us that faith isn't static. It's a living, dynamic force that interacts with the world in profound ways. As we reflect on these issues, let's remember the importance of open dialogue. Whether you find yourself agreeing with traditional teachings, advocating for progressive changes, or somewhere in between, your perspective adds value to this ongoing conversation. These discussions are not about winning or losing, learning, growing, and understanding. Thank you for joining this exploration. Let's continue the conversation, share ideas, and inspire one another to think critically about how faith and society can coexist and thrive together. What are your thoughts? Which of these topics resonated with you the most? We'd love to hear your perspectives in the comments below. Your voice matters, and this is a space for respectful dialogue and shared learning. Whether you align with traditional views, support progressive changes, or are still figuring it out, every perspective adds value to this conversation. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Bible Narratives for more thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.